Dr. Jude Austin, and I'm going to be like former professional soccer, licensed professional clinical, all the things. I can
Yeah.
go and assistant professor in counseling. What's your revolution?
My revolution, man. I don't think it's anything earth shattering. I just want to serve my community one person at a time. Like, it's nothing, I feel like I'd like to say like, oh, I'm going to take over the world. Nah, I just, I have a professor, I had an old professor who's now a current colleague of mine. She told this story about a bunch of starfish washed up on a beach. And there was this kid just going one by one, throwing them in the ocean. And this guy walked past and said, you're not going to be able to save them all. And he says, of course not. But throwing this one starfish into the ocean matters for this one person. And that kind of stuck to me. It's like, I'm not Batman. I won't be able to save the whole city, but if I work with one person for an hour and help them heal through trauma, which then helps them be a better dad, which then helps them raise a better son, which then helps that son marry and be a great partner to their partner, who then raises good kids, who then those kids, it's like, that's how I see the ripple effect. And that's my revolution. It's by making sure I'm able to, for an hour, a couple hours a day, help people change their own lives, and hopefully over the long run, over the long career, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of doing this, I'll be able to see like an impact, Yeah. And it's the same thing when I'm write books, like I've written a couple books with my brother and published them for the American Counseling Association and Springer Publishing Company. And the main thing that we focus on in writing those books is building a relationship with readers, and validating those readers' struggles and experiences in the hopes that we can encourage them to do what we're doing, to start their own little mini revolution and go in 1 hour a day and work with clients and build a relationship and help that person deal with some tough stuff so they can go and be better people to other people. It's a big ripple effect, So I like to say it's nothing special because I just focus on the day-to-day 1 hour at a time kind of thing. But that's my revolution.
Every time Revolutionaries, like you get to hear this wonderful theme, right? When people are really doing good work, they know that the revolution is not just for them. And I say that all the time, Dr. Jude. I say that all the time, is that the work that we do, I do this show, you do the counseling, right?
Yeah.
You write books, you counsel folks, you bring people in. Right. And if we look back at this, right, if we look back at the work that we're doing, right, things, right, we're going to get older. You're probably a much younger man than me. You know what I'm saying? When we get older, you right.
Yeah.
You want to look back and say that my revolution was able to touch more folks.
Absolutely.
Right. And we don't even get to see that.
You don't get to see it. I know.
You don't even get to, you don't even know. The funny thing, right? And Revolutionaries, we're going to get into this conversation because it's so big. But I will have people come up to me on the street.
Yeah.
And say, "You're the revolution guy, aren't you?" I'm like, wait, what? They were like, You're what's your revolution? You're the guy who does what's your revolution. And I'm like, yes. Let me tell you what my revolution is.
Oh, man.
You had me thinking about this. I listened to your show, right? You made me think about how I wanted to change my life, or what I could do, or how could I impact something that was bigger than me. And I'm like, So think about this, because the reason Revolutionaries, why Dr. Jude Austin is on my show, and I want to make sure, if you want to learn more about him, make sure that you go to Dr. Jude Austin Counseling.squarespace.com to learn more about him. You can Google him. There's so much to learn about what this brother is doing. And I want to make sure that you know who he is, and go find and look up his work. But the reason why he's on the show is that we've been having this series of conversations about relationships. And want to give a shout out to
Yeah.
my sister, like my friend, you know, one of the most beautiful, most powerful women of color you're gonna meet, Kashana Palmer. Like Dr. Jude, you gotta like, if you get a chance, check out that episode of me being healthy in a healthy relationship with she and myself. And this sister just brings it, right?
Yeah.
Talking about dating and sitting in health and how we have to show up. And one of the things that she said, she was like, I need somebody to learn how to take me on a date. And I was like, wow. I was like, do I even at this advanced stage of my life, do I know how to plan a date, right? That is not just like, let's go out to dinner, right? Let's go out to dinner and a movie. Man, I'm a little boring. Yeah, I'm a little boring, ladies. I'm sorry. Right. I'm moving too fast. I'm moving too fast. But once we move into a relationship, and for many of us, healthy relationships, you know, have a physical component to them, right?
For sure.
They have a physical component to them, and a mental and physical component. And the reason why I wanted to continue this series of conversations around being healthy in a healthy relationship, and more so having a healthy physical relationship in a relationship, and what does that look like? I was like, yeah, I want to talk to Dr. Jude Austin, right? To have this conversation. You know, marriage and family therapist, licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed professional counselor, professor, all of the things. And you know, you see this brother, right? You see like, this is the dude that we need to talk to. So I want to jump in right to this conversation around, you know, the physical aspects, and, you know, and I know you're coming from the marriage and family lens, but relationships and physical relationships in healthy relationships are so important. And I'm gonna give a little background, right? Because I know where I am at 50, and I know how even since I was a child, the physical aspects of sex have been a part, you know, like a driving force in who I am, right? People have said when Charles Corper walks into a room, like there's a wave, there's a wave, like, oh, like this brother exudes sexuality, right? I don't see it, but people have said that on a number of occasions. Like, oh, Charles Corper's in the room, and I can feel it, and I'm gonna hope that that it's a good feeling. Right? Yeah. Wait a minute, brother. You're
give me a second.
Yeah. But I also want to make sure that this stage of my life, as I'm growing, and the people who are listening and watching this show, understand what it feels like to be in a healthy physical relationship. And particularly for the men that listen to this show, how do they show up healthily in a physical relationship? How do they take care of themselves in a physical, healthy relationship? And what does that look like? So I want to jump in. But this kind of question stood out to me, Dr. Jude, is that as I was doing my homework, there was this article that kind of just stood out to me and said that people are having less sex right now. And I was like, what? And so I was like, I gotta ask that question. Like, is that true? Are people having less sex right now? Is that,
man?
And if they are, why?
You know, like, I don't know if I can answer that question for the world. I can answer it with my clinical experience, like some of the couples I see. And mainly because sex, physical connection, it doesn't have to be the act of sex. And I think that's probably where I would want to start, is that I think sometimes when people think of sex, they immediately think of the act of sex, you know, where I feel like I see it, especially when it's healthy, as this emotional connection over the course of a long period of time, where the act of sex is kind of the result of it. And that act of sex may look different for so many different people, you know? And so I don't know if I would agree with the fact that people are having less sex. I just think sex looks different now. Okay. It's not as traditional as you would imagine sex to be, right? There's some nuances to it now, right? That I think people have to understand. When they talk about how often is sex happening, what's a relationship to sex, what's a healthy relationship to sex, it just looks different now, you know? And so that's something that I think should be encouraged in listeners, is to think about sex differently, and think about it as a relationship, instead of the act of sex. Right? I don't know if that makes sense. I think I may have lost you. It's paused for me. Sex doesn't look the same now. Like, it looks different now, and so, in the article, I'd be curious to see what they mean by sex, because I think a lot of the times people think of sex as like this, the physical aspect of it. But nowadays, I feel like it's kind of nuanced, and it's not just traditional perspectives on sex that play into how often people are having sex, right? A lot of the times, like, people are having a different relationship to sex, and that's the thing that I encourage listeners or viewers to pay attention to, is how they view sex and think of it as a relationship and a long game, and not just something you get to, but something you're in an ongoing relationship with, throughout the day, throughout the time.
Right. That's interesting to think about this, right? Because I will just use myself. That's a paradigm shift.
It is.
Yeah, that's a paradigm shift, because I think about my own sexual journey, and sex has been about reward. Sex has been, it has been about reward, and the reward is the pleasure. But understanding, thinking about a sexual relationship, a healthy sexual relationship, and I'm putting.
I think I lost you.
Here I am.
There you go. I got you.
This is the last time I'm using StreamYard. This is the last. I needed to know if this.
I'm okay with it. I've been teaching online for the past year, so I'm like,
man. My producer will be like, "What is going on? Play it all, Pico." But yeah, even if it's that we're moving towards, having a healthy sexual relation, building a sexual relationship, instead of looking at it like I'm going in and there's a reward at the end of this, or there's a reward for even the beginning of this.
Exactly. You don't want to make it transactional. I think that's the difference, is that a relationship, you get something from it, but the relationship is not transactional. Like, if I'm a good partner, then I'll get sex. If I do this, then I'll get this. If I take you out, then I'll get this. It's a matter of like integrating sex into the process of a relationship, and not thinking about it as I get something for something.
Right. Ooh, exactly. Yes. And there's a larger relationship thing is that I've been wrestling with some of my folks, in the Black manospheres. We'll call it. As I know you.
Yeah. I like that manosphere.
Well, it doesn't have the best connotation. The Black manosphere.
Sure.
It is more so this, from what I understand, this characterization of more of a traditional masculinity. More of a traditional masculinity, and that women have a place in this, and that particularly Black men should not be subservient, and that in this place. And what I'm feeling is this transactional aspect. And that is a very interesting to me, to move past that, right? Move past that.
Yes.
That sex is about communication. Physical aspects is about communication, about what we want, and how do we build that into the components of whatever the relationship looks like. And I'm sure in your practice, the love languages come up a lot, and how we express our love languages, and then how we want our love languages expressed to us. I was in a relationship before I left New Orleans, and we had some tumult, and I remember after, and we had been together for a little bit of time, up and down, but I remember us having a conversation about our love languages.
Yeah.
And once I realized that, well, what I thought was her love languages were not, and the realization that, you know, particularly for many women, the love is acts of service.
Yeah.
It shifted the dynamic of it all, Doc.
Yeah.
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 And like you said, it became like it wasn't transactional anymore.
Yeah, like awareness will do that to you, man. Like awareness will, and like, you know, the thing is that once you're aware of it, you can't become unaware of it. It's like the paradoxical theory of change, you know. And so, like, you know, when you think about things like love languages, I like to think of them as like being like divergent. Everybody has a certain amount of percentage going into a love language, a particular love language, right? Like act of service, it just may be higher on that side. But I just want to get the point across that, like, you still got to do all the other stuff. Even if their love language is this act of service, all the other stuff is important too.
Right.
You know? It's just
say that again.
emphasizing
that is
the
true.
other things. You know what I mean? And I think that plays into sex. It's almost like you're priming the pump, or you are investing in sex, right? It's not like you withdraw it, you know. It's that you do these acts of kindness, you do the love languages, right? Not to get sex, but so that when you do have sex, it's more connecting.
It is more,
you know, it's more, it's deeper, it's richer. It's not just the act and then I'll see you later. You know, and then it's the conversation afterwards. And, you know, like that's the stuff that you're investing into, you know, that pulls people closer to you, you know?
Yeah, I do know. And I do, sadly, Doc, I do know. And as I was doing my homework last night for our show together today, I was, doing the self-awareness work that I do, but also having conversations with friends. And in those conversations, just thinking about like, what does a physical relationship look like for me today? And really thinking about, like, you know, really thinking about what excites me, what really will engage. I'm trying to say this in a very Dr. Corporal-esque way, like, you know what I'm saying? You know, this is a podcast. But really what turns me on these days. And when I was having a really in-depth conversation with one of my friends, and I was like, I used to roll like this, right? And there was this excitement that went with rolling like this, you know. I am engaged in a certain lifestyle, and we don't need to talk about what that lifestyle, like, you know.
For sure.
But I got when I was younger, I someone brought me into into the lifestyle, and I was like, oh wow, this is I like this. This is exciting. This is wow. I can do this, you know. Wow. And then you realize, and then I realized, like, oh, more and more people kind of like this, and there's a power play to all of this. And
it is.
What I was telling my friend was, I was like, I think the dopamine rush is worn off.
Yeah, man.
You know, and that rush of being a part of that has shifted. Like, and like you said, there's a level of I want the intimacy.
Yeah.
Right.
Go
ahead.
I was gonna say, you reached a point of diminishing returns. That's what they call it.
Yeah,
exactly. You reach a point at that bell-shaped curve where you're now not getting the benefits from that lifestyle like you were before. Same thing with alcohol. You know, there's a point where you can drink until you start getting the positives, and now you're experiencing the negatives. That lifestyle comes to a point to where you're like, this is fun, but also kind of lonely. You know? Like, I'm in a room full of people feeling alone. You know, like I need more. You know, even in a relationship. Yeah. The problem is that, you know, not the problem, but maybe, a side effect is that in that lifestyle, you pick up a lot of bad relational habits, like you pick up a lot of like processes, and you get pulled and sucked into processes. And it's hard to kind of hold on to what you know to be healthy when you get pulled into so many dysfunctional processes. And then when you bring that into the next relationship, it's almost like you have to unlearn how to be with somebody in order to learn how to be with that somebody, that one specific somebody.
Yeah, talk about that. Let's do a little deeper dive in that, because I feel like I'm the guinea pig in this. I have found myself like, okay, I like you, like I want to be in this with you, but then there's still that pull. How do people unlearn bad relational and physical relationship behaviors so they can show up better, right? Because again, transparency, I have left relationships because I hadn't done the work, and it just didn't feel right. I was like, oh, well, I didn't give it time.
Yeah.
How do people unlearn those bad habits that may stymie them from having a healthy relationship, a healthy physical relationship?
Absolutely. Okay, so I would probably start with, and we're getting into like theories like cybernetics. We're getting into feedback loops, which we don't have to dive into that deep. Yeah, like we don't have to be.
No, go ahead.
It's not going to be in the quiz. But I'll nerd out on this stuff, man. How much time? No. Okay, so everybody think of it as homeostatic patterns. Everybody has a true north. Right? On a compass, you always go back to that true north. We learn these patterns from our family of origins, right? How to relate to people, even though they don't explicitly tell you, hey, this is how you love somebody. You learn by watching, oh, this is what love looks like. This is how you love somebody, right? You go out into the world, and it depends on your attachment to your primary caregivers. But when you go out into the world, man, you start getting a little like cuts of how to do different things, and those things aren't always healthy, right? And so in order to stop those bad habits, or those what I would call them as like ineffective relationship patterns, right, you got to become aware of what it is you're doing. I mean, the feedback loops, you got to sit down and say, okay, she said this, and then I said this, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then we got back to normal. Right? Because the homeostatic patterns always goes back to, how was this resolved? Right? And it may look like something like, you forgot something, she caught you out on it, you felt defensive, so you pulled away, she ran towards you, but because maybe you have an avoidant personality or avoidant attachment, right? You run away, and so you run away, and then like something will happen. Maybe you resolve it by saying, I'm sorry. She says, okay. But then a couple weeks later, that pattern does the same thing. You forget something. She calls you out on it. You feel defensive. You run away. She chases you. You run for a little while she's chasing you. That's called a complementary relationship style, right? And so it's called the distancer pursuer, where like people will chase each other around. They don't know they're doing it, but they're chasing each other, And so in order to stop that, it doesn't take much. Like it really does. I want people to understand that, like, it doesn't take you changing your whole life in order to, it literally takes a small act of differentiation, a tiny act of turning towards instead of running away. In those moments, validating instead of being defensive, right? Being humble instead of being proud, right? Like just little 30 seconds of a pause, right? But in order to change those habits, you got to understand what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're actually doing, not what you think is happening, not what you feel is happening, like what is actually happening, right? Because our thoughts and our feelings get distorted by fear and anxiety, and it pulls us away from the truth. And so when you're able to sit there, maybe in counseling, get a little bit of therapy, just sprinkle it on the day. It can help you pull yourself out of a dysfunctional system, and you're able to see, man, how are we dancing around each other? Like, how are we moving around each other, literally moving around each other, right? How do we do that? And with that, you have the power to change. You have the power to grow. Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is seeing yourself, right? I mean, literally, and I don't want it to sound pathological, almost disassociating yourself for a second. And
so a less pathological way to put that is differentiating, pulling yourself out of a pattern and then looking at it. Right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Like sometimes I even tell couples or I tell people, like, go in a different room. If you're arguing in the kitchen, go in the living room and say, what are they arguing about? What are they upset about?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and that's what I mean by you're not disassociating, but you're differentiating out of that pattern. You're pulling yourself out of that dysfunctional pattern, you know?
Right.
Yeah. If that makes more sense. I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And I begin to think about, like, how do I pull myself out of, you know, when something doesn't feel right, or, you know, something doesn't feel right. Well, pull myself out of it and say, why doesn't this feel right? Are these old patterns of behavior, right? Is this the old life? Is this the old corporal, as I used to call him, the bad boy who loved the lifestyle and all the things? Is this his head rearing up saying, hey, this isn't what we're used to. So yo, let's roll out because I'm not really happy in this. Well, you're supposed to be in the basement anyway.
No, don't keep.
What were you supposed to be in the basement anyway? Well, how you come up the stairs? You know
what happened to the lock? Yeah, he picked the lock, man.
Yeah, what are you doing? How you getting this conversation? But that's the thing, like seeing the pattern. There's also, I will say this. I will say this. I would love to dive more in this. I will also say that our patterns and preferences, right? There's nothing wrong with that as well.
Not at all.
Right. There's nothing wrong with that. And not at all. I think as I've grown and I've had these conversations with other grown men, right? As like, bro, I like what I like, but I don't know how to communicate that without feeling like, and maybe that's my stuff or their stuff, like feeling like it's going to scare people, or like, I don't know if you know, what is the best way to think about that? Because that's a part of a healthy relationship, is that communication. And you got to know early on, I think, right? How do you communicate your physical preferences in a manner that opens conversation for it instead of shutting it down? I think that's the question.
Yeah, man. That's such a tough question. That the answer that comes, the way that I've seen it done well, and the answer that comes to my mind is openly, humbly, without judgment, without any expectations, right? Without feeling like, I want you to be in this relationship and you have to like this, you know? It's almost like you go in being willing to risk the relationship for the sake of congruency. You know, like you have to be willing to risk that relationship for the sake of congruency.
What do you mean the risk?
Yeah, like people may say, I don't like this. That's not my thing. People may judge you. You know, is it worth that? Is it worth getting rejected in order to be congruent?
Right.
Like that is the underneath all of this stuff, the conversation about healthy sexuality, healthy sexual practices in a relationship, and sharing that with the other person, making that relational. The undercurrent of that is, are you willing to risk this relationship for the sake of congruency? And some people aren't, and that's what starts dysfunction. Because you sacrifice yourself for the sake of this relationship, right? And you can't have one or the other. It has to be you in a relationship. Right? Like you have to be in that relationship, or it's just not going to work,
As I say on the show all the time, like, I love this because it makes me think, and if it's making me think, I'm hoping that it's making my revolutionaries think about this, right? right? Because we engage, we grow, we mature, right? We experience new things, we see new things. And if you're in short-term, long-term committed relationships, communication is key. And but I love what you just said, because there is a risk. There's vulnerability is a risk.
It is.
It is a risk. And to me, vulnerability is the truest form of yourself. And when you have the ability to be vulnerable and to say the things that you want, or to say the things that you dislike, or to say the things that you don't want, that is a level of empowerment, you know. And I'm quick to, right, the funny thing about it is I'm quick to say, yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. What do you mean you don't want to try that? No, look, I'm good.
I'm all right.
What do you mean you don't want to try that? So there is right. There's that vulnerability that comes with that. And is there an opportunity, you know, when someone presents something and they're vulnerable and open, how and you receive it in a certain way at first where you're like, no, because I've been like, no.
Yeah.
How might you open yourself up for what the person might be asking for? And so, for example, if your partner comes home and says, you know, I would love to bring someone else into our relationship, right? Or I would love to bring toys, or I'd love to bring something else that they might feel might heighten the sexual or the physical experience. How might you open yourself up to that? Particularly as a man, I really want to couch this in man, as a man, particularly if your partner is coming in and saying, I want to do things, because I feel like, and tell me if I'm wrong, we are socialized that we're supposed to be the ones laying it down all the time, every time, right? Like we're the
all the time, every day.
Every time, like, right? You put it, as you say, I'm putting on the hard hat. I'm coming to work every time. It just does not happen like this, brothers. Right? It does not happen like that all the time. And as you get older, you're not. Look, hey, the work in your 20s looks different than the work in your 50s. I promise you,
man.
It looks different. Intimacy looks different. I'm just saying.
And it's different when you have kids and you're exhausted. And I mean, it's just sometimes you don't got it. Sometimes you don't got it.
Sometimes you got like 18 different things on your mind, and like, like this is the 19th thing, and my man is like, nope. I'm still worried about the other 18 things. So, you know what I'm saying? He's like, we're not even coming out to play today. Sorry.
Yeah, man. But you know, to
go ahead.
I was gonna say, to get to your question, curiosity, right? Non-judgmental acceptance, right? Classic things. You don't have to say yes. The point is not to say yes or no. The point is to create vulnerability. The point is to listen, you know, because regardless of what it is that your partner is asking you to do, vulnerability and accepting that vulnerability is sexy. It doesn't matter if you say, I'll try it, you know, but that's not something that I'm really into, you know. And if she says that's a deal breaker, then the relationship couldn't be helped. You know, I mean, you tried, you know, and maybe she wants something different or he wants something different, you know. But the whole point of this, right, is to listen with curiosity and openness. And I think, like, when we talk about the act of sex and we talk about healthy relationships, like, that's all sex really is vulnerability and accepting vulnerability, you know, is having power, but not abusing that power. Right? For both sides, you know, you're with each other at your most vulnerable. And if you can't be with somebody when they're their most vulnerable outside of sex, what will make that person trust you to handle them when they're most vulnerable during sex? You know? And so when they engage in that conversation, you got to sit there and literally tell yourself, you know, calm down, take a breath. The most important thing I can do right now is listen and validate that person. Okay? That doesn't mean you have to agree. It just means you have to sit there and listen and validate that person and say, tell me more about that. Tell me what makes you want to be into something like that. Like, have you thought about it? What would it mean to you? Why is this important to you? What makes this so important to you? You know, and then be able to sit and have an open conversation around like, I don't know if I'm really willing to try that. It feels like something I may not be into, and just have that dialogue. It's the dialogue that is the connective tissue of this whole thing.
Right. Communication.
Not like, don't have that like emotional reaction of like, oh no, it's not for me. I can't do it. It's like, calm down. Hey, calm down and listen,
Right. Communication is key. And as we know, good sex starts outside of the bedroom.
Man,
at least
good sex starts when you take out the trash on Wednesday, so he or she
I hear that.
You know what I mean?
I hear that works.
Like it's making eggs and cleaning the pan,
Right.
It's like it's stuff like that,
Yeah. No.
So we're at the end when it happens, it's intimate, it's vulnerable.
Yeah, I hear that, and that is a part of a part of the growth, as I talked about the relationship that I had in New Orleans when we found out each other's love languages and really put those into work. Yeah,
like I would practice them.
Yeah, you practice it. I would just come in the house and right, I would come in the house and start cleaning, and or she would be out, come home, the dishes were washed, the trash was out, the dog was taken care of, the dog was walked, all the things, right? As a mother of three with all of the things, and an entrepreneur herself, like taking things off of her plate gave her more opportunity to attune to me and my love language, which is touch and quality time. And then being and I was like, okay, all right, we're good. But it's just it is just that a great physical relationship starts well beyond the bedroom, beyond the bedroom, and understanding that. Let me move the conversation a little bit, because we live in an OnlyFans, we live in a highly sexualized. I got introduced last night to freak Twitter, which I had no clue. Right, I was like, wait, what? Twitter is for news. I get Twitter's for news to let me know that Elon Musk just bought it. Twitter's for politics and VC. They were like, but there's also a side of Twitter called Freak Twitter, and I'm like, I'm scared to go to Freak Twitter. Yeah, man. I mean, I grew up where you couldn't. There wasn't easy access to porn. But now in 3 seconds, less than 3 nanoseconds, you can pull. Yeah. How do you reduce the danger of bringing the nefariousness of those things into your physical relationship?
Man, okay, so I'd probably start with separating reality from like fiction, and having a real understanding that what you see on the screen is not real. Now there is most definitely room to take ideals and grab ideals and understand kind of what you like and explore, and from whatever it is you use, books, conversations, videos, whatever, but understanding that the connection you see, right, it's not real, and in real life it takes work, to build that connection. I think that's the one way to do it. So to recap, a healthy way is taking ideas, using it, but being very certain and sure that that is not real, and knowing that your partner, a real partner, has real feelings and wants and hopes, and it takes work to make what looks fake on the screen actually be real in life.
Right.
And I mean, it's the couples that I've seen do this stuff well, they just do the boring stuff really good. Over a long
wait. What is the boring stuff? What do you mean?
The boring stuff, man. You wake up first, right? You take the trash out to the yard, so he or she doesn't have to. Mm-hmm. Like you take the trash out, you put a new bag in, right? Like they just do the boring stuff.
The boring
they're
stuff,
really good, right? Like they just do life together really good. And I think if you are watching stuff on the screen, whether it be porn or if you are watching, reading, talking, communicating, being able to understand that what you see on the screen, right? That what they want you to see on the screen in real life takes actual work to get there. It takes vulnerability. It takes communication. It takes, I think so that the dysfunction in relationships come when there's a dissonance between what I see and what I have, and the expectations that like I should have this, It's
and it should be like that every time.
And it should be like every time, It's like, no, you can most certainly have that with a partner that you build trust and vulnerability and communication and health with. Oh yeah, that you can be freak Twitter in your house with your partner if you put in the work to make that happen. Like that's the takeaway. That because when you have that expectation, it's so easy to be resentful when why isn't this like, it's like, man, because that is fake. As real as it feels, it's not.
And if you've been in the lifestyle, you can get caught up with those expectations, and you can see those heightened things as well. And then
exactly.
And then you get into you get into the real world, right? Because the lifestyle is not the lifestyle to me. It's not the real world. It is like, I'll call it the Olympics. I'll call it the circus. I'll call it whatever. But it's not. It's not full-time real life. And then getting into reality and the ability to have a loving, healthy, communicative, vulnerable relationship, right? You have to, like as you said earlier, you have to differentiate yourself, right? Right.
Yeah.
I think what I hear, you can bring some ideals into
absolutely
right. And then, as we said earlier, and communicate that and have a vulnerability of communication, and then find somewhere in the middle. But you can't that's not real life, right?
No.
Swings and trampolines and all that's not real life.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff is great, but I mean, hey, you pick up a kid and tweak your knee, that swing can be hard to get up into. I mean, that's real life, that's real life, that is real life, revolutionaries. Like, there are other things going on. And being able to look at your partner and say, okay, we can't do the swing today because I know that you did, you picked up the jug of water, you threw your back out, not having the expectation of like what I see on TV is what I expect 24/7. And if I don't, then I'm not getting what I deserve.
I think that, and I think that's the point. That's the point. The reality that that what we see on this is art, I'll label it that is art, and that we view art, right? We view art, but taking away that it's not the realization that, right, this is the art that I'm the artist in this, right? I need to be able to create my own art. Right. I could take examples from this, but then I become the artist and we become the artist together and understanding what this feels like for us. Right. I love this.
That's it.
Look, we said in Revolutionaries, this is going to be a series of conversations, right? Dr. Jude and I have talked about this. So this will be a series of conversations as we see like this topic of healthy relationships, right? Being healthy in a healthy relationship and how the physical aspects are part of this. So as we close out just like conversation 1 today, because I sent him a litany of questions. But one of the things, actually, I'm going to ask 2 more questions. One of the things is that, as I think about this show as an equitable show, this is for men and the people who love them.
For sure.
And I was talking to one of my friends last night, and the question came up and particularly for men of color, is that how do we allow men of color to explore their sexuality without shame? Because and he gave the interesting analogy is that when women explore their sexuality, they're lauded or we're indifferent about it, right? oh wow, go do your thing. Like we want to see it, like it becomes ornate, like, oh, we want to see it, or we're indifferent about it. But when men explore their sexuality, it becomes like, oh, I don't want to be around you, right? You're gay, you're all the negative things that lead to shame. How do we allow men and men of color in this to explore themselves sexually without shame?
Man, I think like it boils down to a choice for each person to choose to validate, right? It doesn't mean you have to be okay with it. And I think that's the difference. It's like you can sit there and listen to somebody and openly process it, and it may not be for you, right? But you take the shame out of it by listening and validating. It comes down to a choice, and each person, each listener, you, me, to choose to make that space available for other people, for our friends, to engage in that conversation, right? To make it so that it's normal. It's just an everyday conversation, right? Respecting that there's going to be some resistance, and being intentional about how you handle that resistance, right? You got to openly kind of talk about it without triggering somebody's insecurities, right? Because this isn't something we talk about. Like, man, nobody sits there and teaches you, hey, here's how you love somebody. Here's how you talk about sexuality. These are things that we have to intentionally do for each other, in the spaces that we're in, is opening up those conversations, right? And then if you're the one sharing, like, I would encourage the person to be open about the fear of being judged, the fear of shame, the fear of whatever it is that you feel, and say, hey, this may be hard to hear. Hey, y'all got something to share. I don't look, hey, you may, make fun of me if you will, but I trust y'all,
Right.
like
Tone,
opening up, setting the tone for it, like couching it in a way, and I think if you can do both, if you can have one part of the relationship being open to it, one part of the relationship being willing to share, then you can start having those dialogues, but it starts with the choice to be intentional about how we create those conversations for each other.
Right. Brene Brown we talked so much about vulnerability, and she talks about that we will, our friends' relationships, that we open spaces to see whether or not we can trust them. We give them opportunities to see if we can trust them. And I think that we have to build those spaces around trust, right? And to test, right? To test, because we have ostracized men who explore their sexuality. Right. I could get into the church and the Baptist church and Christianity, and how, and in the Black Baptist church, how it has stymied men from exploring their sexuality out in the open. And then just the culture of, of men of, certain cultures of men of color, again, shame that, or, move away from that. Yeah. But being able to test with your core group, like, can I really trust you to tell the story? Man. Because brothers need a space to be who they are, whoever they are, right? Whoever they are, because if we don't have a group of people to talk to openly, right, then we are lost. And this show is not about suicide, but what happens is, when we don't have people to talk to, when we don't have a community, right, of like-minded folks that we can't go to, that we feel vulnerable, that we trust, we're holding stuff inside. Yeah, man. Yep. And that holding stuff inside is, as a therapist, leads to deleterious impact on our mental health and our physical health. And so that's the interesting thing. It was a great question. As I was going through this, he was like, "What happened? Where do I go? If he's like, I want to explore my sexuality, but I'm not lauded. I'm not lauded for it. Yeah, right. I'm not a woman. Like, Yeah, and it's frowned upon. A good place to start, and I feel like I can't push this enough, is therapy. Like finding an objective person
finding a brother or a sister that you look at their website and you think, I want to talk to that person, and go with the intention to talk about it, right? But what a good therapist is going to do is push you into your community, and prepare you to start using resources outside of therapy. And so you can use therapy as a way to openly process things so that you have it prepared to share with your friends, So you workshop it in therapy. You don't workshop it with your friends if you don't feel comfortable doing it.
Right.
And you just play around with it and dance with it in your head and talk out loud and kind of see how it feels, and then bring it to the friends, bring it to your core group, and say, man, I've been working on this for a while. I just wanted to bring it to y'all. Let me know what you think, and you do it in a very open, humble, you do it, man, over a barbecue pit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, make it so that it's not this thing. We're having a conversation, like everybody come in the room. I need to share.
Right. No, it's a part of this. I also think is that the peer group has to do their own work as well.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It has to be a choice from the other side to choose to listen, to choose to make space for people to come in when they're ready to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, it is. And I know the work that, my journey to be an ally, right? An ally and accomplice to my people, right? Across marginalized communities, right? And one of the things I know, and I harp on with other men of color, and particularly Black men, is like, y'all out here screaming for like equity and equality and treat me as a man. But then in turn, right, if someone is not cisgender, in the box, in your box, right, you're quick to marginalize them, right? And I'm like, wait, you can't be asking for help and then being the oppressor to someone
and turning
else.
your back. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So opening that space up. And I know, look, there's a growth aspect in all of us. And I know that I have grown in there and I continue to grow. I know where my blind spots are, and I'm trying to make sure that I can mitigate those blind spots. Last question. The last thing that's on my mind, and this is a personal question, right? And I usually don't, right? Usually don't, but is that breaking cycles of toxic dating.
Oh man.
And I will say this out loud. I've said it on the show. I have a pattern, right? I have a pattern of being the first guy that women have dated after coming out of a toxic relationship. And typically what has happened is that the love bombing and the physical relationship is great, but the emotional intelligence just isn't there, or they haven't worked through it.
Yeah.
And so, and it's not just me. I've had this conversation, but how do you break that? How do you break that side of I will call it toxic dating behavior?
Yeah. I mean, you're already aware of it, right? I think we talked about it. You mentioned it. You said like some of the struggles I have is the person not being ready for a deeper connection when I'm ready, right? The question I would ask, and we don't have to get into it in the show, the question I would ask is, what makes you attracted to someone who is available but not available? You know what I mean? Like, and maybe having those conversations, like in those relationships, like this is not therapy, but this can be for anybody, right? Like, why are you attracted to the people that you're attracted to? Why are the people you're attracted to you? Like, you got to understand, why are you pulling these people towards you, and why are you pulled towards these people, right? Because there's some inherent fear with dating somebody who's ready. Like there's some fear.
Hey, look at the time. Look at the time. Look at the time.
Yeah, man. There's some fear. Like, what happens? Am I ready when they're ready? There's a safety. There's a huge safety in knowing somebody is not necessarily ready to go deep, but they can give you the affection and the love bombing and things like that, and there's something in there about you wanting to be with somebody as they go through that, just not having the patience to wait for them to, and not that patience is needed, but just, so it's figuring out what it is that I'm doing. Why am I attracted to these people,
Right.
to these types of, and it's not the people. Don't think of it as people, because people aren't attracted to people. I've said this like 1,000 times, I feel like, in counseling. People are attracted to patterns, like they're not attracted to people. Most of my time in therapy when I'm working with a couple is to actually get the people to see the person, and pull out of the pattern. That's why people date the same person with a different face over and over again
for a long time.
Because it's the pattern that you're so figuring out, why is this pattern important for me right now? What is it doing for me right now? How is it serving me right now? It's what I would say to anybody.
Yeah, no, that's the mic drop right there. Like, boom.
There was one. Yeah,
people don't date people; they date patterns, and literally, and that has been a part of my journey, my self-awareness work, right? And I think that my revolutionaries can, as they when, once we weave this whole tapestry of this interview together, they will realize that, hopefully, is that I need to go back and look at how I'm showing up. What are the patterns?
Yeah.
And I think, because, I have this question, like, what are the 3 or 4 practical steps to take charge and enhance their sexual experiences? We've given them those 3 or 4 things that they need to do, right?
Absolutely.
Like being open, right? Doing the self-awareness work, right? Having the conversations about what you like, and right. And then being open to, right, having the conversation,
being curious, non-judgmental, accepting.
Exactly, right.
It doesn't mean you have to like it or do it. It's just being open to listening.
Right. Being a part of a community of people that allows you to, like, be your full self.
Absolutely.
Right? And thinking about that, and then also being self-aware to see your patterns, particularly if they're toxic. And how do you differentiate yourself from that so you can actually see yourself?
Exactly.
And that was the thing. And I asked that question. I already know the answer, but I told myself, I was like, I will not be the first person after you've been in a toxic relationship anymore, because for me it has been the kind of, like, I feel like I allowed myself to be the servant. I won't say savior, the servant, right? In this, I'm going to help you get through this, but ultimately, like, you're not ready for this, and then I'm left, like, I'm left reeling from all of that, right? And so I mean, that's probably a better way to get that fix without going through the breakup and the relation. You know what I mean? Like, like, you can definitely save somebody. It's just in a way that doesn't break your heart. There you go.
And that's how. And everybody. And I think that's what I really want people to understand, is that these patterns that you're in, they aren't bad. Like, don't disown a part of yourself because it doesn't feel good. Just find a more effective way to get that itch scratched. And then take that out of an intimate relationship. But do it in your community. To volunteer, volunteer to battered men's or women's shelter. But I mean, get that itch scratched some way, but take it out of the relationships.
Right. Exactly. Dr. Jude, I appreciate. Look, I definitely appreciate this, folks. I want you to make sure you go check out Dr. Jude Austin. Let me make sure I got his website. Let me make sure the reps at Dr. Jude Austin Counseling at squarespace.com. Make sure you check out all of his good work. You said there were a couple of books, and I want to make sure that if folks want to go read, tell us about it.
Yeah, so I wrote most of my books for counseling students and practitioners, but you can certainly get it if you're not in the counseling realm. And we talk about all of the processes of counseling. I've written the counselor self-care for the American Counseling Association with my brother and Jerry Corey and Michelle Mortori. Surviving and Thriving in Your Counseling Program is another book I've written for the American Counseling Association. If you are thinking about becoming a therapist, or you're curious about what therapists do, That's a good one to pick up. The Counselor Educator's Guide for counselor educators who are dropped into a faculty position and you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Pick up that book. It can kind of help you do that. And then we've got a couple more that we're writing now. One should be published next year called the Counselor's Field Manual. Should come out next year. But yeah, so, and we try to build relationships. And so if you read the book, you'll see us. You'll see me,
Right.
You'll see my brother. More than in learning anything, you'll say, I know these dudes, and so that's what we love to do. That's what we love to write. So I hope you get it. I hope you like it if you do.
It's a beautiful thing. Doc, I appreciate it. I look forward to this series of conversations around being healthy in a healthy relationship and how to have a healthy physical relationship in a healthy relationship and all the things. Revolutionaries, that we are here for you, and all of these topics, right, that we talk about are helping you be the best version of yourself, that you can find and build your revolution so you can go out in the world and be the best version, the best revolutionary for your people. This is what this is about, and being able to show up in a relationship, and I'll say this, to be satisfied and to satisfy is a part of who we are, right? And having that communication, right? Understanding that the beauty of it, because I feel like, we talk so much about how hard relationships are. I very rarely hear about the beauty of relationships. And when we do the work, relationships can be very beautiful. They can be empowering. And my boys and friends who are in beautiful, empowering relationships, they have the ability to self-actualize. And that is big for me, Doc. That ability to go to the next level of your life where you are fulfilling your mission and purpose, right? And that's the thing. I don't want to, literally the last thing I'll say is that I'm tired of, I don't want to spend this much time at this station. Self-actualization, this whole thing is much bigger, and it's time. So Revolutionaries, do your thing. I love you. I wish you well. And you can always reach out. We are here for you. Have a great, great day, time, place, wherever you're doing. Know that we are with you. Talk to you soon. Peace.